The radio call at Aero 342 flipped everything. "They've got the colonel. Repeat. Hostile forces have captured Colonel Robert Keane," was followed by gunfire, Arabic shouts, then a crushing silence as Captain Hadley Cross stared at the dead radio, her brain racing through the worst possibilities. The battalion commander had been snatched by a group that specialized in filmed executions for propaganda. The textbook answer was to assemble a rescue force, spend hours planning and coordinating with higher command, by which point Keane would likely be dead. Hadley traced the tactical map to a hostile compound 15 kilometers out, thought of the colonel who'd mentored her for 3 years, slung her rifle and every magazine she owned, and walked out without asking for permission. Sometimes you had to walk alone into darkness and show the enemy that taking an American hostage would be their last mistake. 3 years earlier, when Hadley Cross first met Colonel Robert Keane, she was a lieutenant fresh from Ranger School, fighting to prove she belonged in a combat arms unit that still doubted women. Keane was a 30-year veteran with 2 combat deployments and the quiet competence that pulled better officers out of those around him. Their first exchange was blunt. "Lieutenant Cross, I don't care if you're male, female, or Martian. Can you lead soldiers in combat?" "Yes, sir." "Then prove it." People in that battalion often assumed she didn't belong. Hadley made them wrong. For 3 years, she led her platoon through 2 deployments, earning the respect of soldiers who had once doubted her and proving that gender didn't matter when bullets flew and split-second choices had to be made. Keane had been there the whole time, mentoring, pushing, sharpening her. Now he was a hostage for enemies who would torture him for intel, film his execution for propaganda, and dump his body in a desert where it might never be found. The secure facility in the Kareth Basin was officially an observation post, a small American presence watching remnants and blocking resurgence. But in practice it was a staging ground for deniable operations, run by names that lived in classified files even most generals couldn't see. Hadley had been the site's operations officer, coordinating intel, managing assets, doing the staff work competent officers do between deployments. Keane had flown in for a routine inspection with his security detail and a plan to stay 48 hours reviewing operations, and his return convoy was ambushed. Professional, coordinated, executed with the precision that suggested the route and timing had been leaked. The security team fought hard. Hadley monitored radio traffic, heard calm voices calling contacts and directing fire, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. And when the shooting stopped, Keane was gone. The site commander, a major steeped in intelligence analysis with no experience leading troops in direct combat, immediately launched the standard hostage recovery playbook. Contact higher headquarters, assemble available forces, develop courses of action, and request special operations support. Everything by the book, and all taking the time Keane didn't have. Hadley studied the facts with the cold clarity training taught her. Her intel placed Keane in a compound in a village 15 kilometers northeast, a location her network had identified within an hour of the capture. The compound sat reinforced, watched over by roughly 20 fighters and surrounded by civilians who either sided with the enemy or were too frightened to talk. A standard rescue would need heavy force, careful planning, and hours to organize. Time Robert Keane didn't have, and a delay that would likely leave his body staged in an ISIS propaganda clip. The site commander read the same intel and reached the obvious call: wait for special operations assets. This exceeds our capability. Hadley Cross looked at that same picture and made a different call. 15 kilometers is close enough to hit before dawn. 20 fighters could be wiped out with bold planning and fast execution. beyond our capability, only meant what conventional units usually won't attempt. Hadley hadn't spent 3 years earning a Ranger tab and proving herself in combat to sit in an operations center while someone she respected was tortured and killed. She left the command post at 0400 hours, unofficially, without authorization, shouldered her personalized M4 carbine, loaded 6 magazines for a total of 210 rounds, grabbed night vision and a combat medic kit, and walked to the motor pool. The gate guard blinked and asked, "Ma'am, you aren't on the movement log." "Emergency supply run to Outpost Vega," she said smoothly. "Just got the call. Back before morning formation." The guard hesitated, then waved her through. Junior enlisted rarely challenge captains who stride with purpose and speak with certainty, and that pause bought her the 10-minute head start she needed. She drove an unmarked civilian pickup northeast through terrain that varied from probably hostile to definitely trying to kill you. Night vision turning the Kareth Basin into a green maze of roads, villages, and barren desert. Hadley drove with her rifle across her lap, windows down despite the cold, ears tuned for other vehicles or movement that might signal danger. She'd worked this region long enough to know which roads were safe, which villages to avoid, and which could be slipped through without attracting notice. The trip took 40 minutes, terrain that would have taken hours on foot, and she parked 2 kilometers from the compound behind a low ridge, then went on alone through absolute dark outside her NVG. 2 kilometers of careful movement, checking every shadow, listening to every sound, moving with the patient rhythm that separates those who survive from those who don't. She reached an overwatch on a small rise 300 meters from the target as dawn began to pale the eastern sky. Through binoculars, Hadley studied the compound. Traditional regional construction, mud brick walls around a central courtyard, single-story rooms, flat roofs turned into fighting positions. She counted 6 guards visible on the walls and estimated at least that many more inside. Vehicles filled the yard, 2 technicals with heavy machine guns in their beds. Through a window in the main building, she saw a figure her gut told her was Keen, hands bound and watched by 2 fighters with AK-47s. The tactical picture was brutal and simple. 1 operator against at least 20 enemies inside a fortified location. Conventional military wisdom called it suicide. Special operations doctrine said you needed a team, support, and coordination. Hadley looked at the compound, thought of Keen, and decided that sometimes conventional wisdom and doctrine could go to hell. She spent the next 30 minutes laying out the assault with the kind of methodical precision Ranger School had beaten into her. Pick key targets, the wall sentries, the technical gun crews, anyone who looked like leadership, and build a sequence of engagement. Who to shoot first, second, third, how to route movement, where to take cover, and the breach plan. The scheme was straightforward and brutal, giving her roughly a 30% chance of survival, but a 90% chance Keen would walk out alive. And that was the math that mattered. Hadley ran a final check on her rifle, 210 rounds across 6 mags. Not enough for a protracted fight, but enough if she made every shot count. Her hands were steady, breath controlled, and her mind settled into that peculiar calm that comes when you accept you might die but decide to make it count. She keyed a small radio that likely wouldn't reach the operations center but might be heard by monitors. "This is Captain Cross. I am conducting solo direct action on hostile compound at grid reference November, Victor 478321. Multiple hostiles attempting hostage extraction. If you're monitoring this net, send support. If not, tell my family I went down swinging. Cross out." Then she shut it off, left it behind the ridge where it could be recovered later, and began her approach. The first guard fell without knowing he'd been targeted. A single suppressed round from 200 meters that toppled him from the wall. The second guard spun toward the collapse, and Hadley cut him down too, shifting targets with practiced speed. 2 down, 18 to go. She closed using a dry irrigation ditch for concealment, rifle up and ready. A third sentry surfaced on the wall, scanning with growing alarm. Hadley settled behind cover, steadied her breath, and fired. He dropped. 3 down, 17 left. The compound started to react. Shouts, fighters moving toward the walls. Someone had realized they were under attack even if they didn't know from where. Hadley reached the outer wall and set a small thermite breaching charge that would burn through mud brick without the blast of a standard charge. She took cover, detonated it, and counted the burn seconds until the hole was big enough to enter. She flowed through fast and hard, rifle searching for targets. The courtyard was chaos. Fighters running, snagging weapons, trying to form a defense against an assault they didn't understand. And Hadley shot the first 3 she saw center mass, dropping them before they could respond. 6 down, 14 to go. A technical's machine gun opened up, tracers tracking her position. She rolled behind a vehicle as rounds sprayed where she'd been standing, came up on the far side, acquired the gunner, and put 3 rounds into him. He slumped over his weapon. 7 down, 13 to go. 2 fighters came from a doorway with weapons raised. Hadley engaged the first and dropped him, then shifted to the second. Her rifle clicked empty, the first magazine spent, and she ran a tactical reload, the empty mag hitting the ground as a fresh one snapped home. Practiced muscle memory made it automatic. Hadley engaged the second fighter as he tried to find cover, 2 rounds to the torso dropping him. 9 down, 11 to go. She pushed toward the main building where she'd seen Keane keeping low, moving between vehicles and walls as rounds cracked past her head and kicked up dirt at her boots. The enemy was beginning to coordinate, realizing a single attacker was moving through their compound with deadly purpose. Someone showed up on a rooftop with an RPG. Hadley pivoted, put a round through him before he could shoulder the launcher, and the weapon clattered down into the courtyard. 10 down, 10 to go. She reached the main door, paused to listen, then kicked it in and flowed inside with her rifle sweeping. Inside was dim after the brightening dawn. 2 fighters were hustling Keane toward a back exit. Her sudden arrival sent them into panic as they tried to relocate their prize. Hadley shot the first, then the second, both dropping before they could bring weapons to bear. Keane was bound and gagged but awake. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Hold still, sir," Hadley said, drawing a knife and cutting his restraints. "We're leaving." "Captain Cross, what the hell are you doing?" he asked. "Later, move," she snapped, hauling him toward the door with her rifle up and sweeping. They made 3 steps into the courtyard before the remaining fighters opened up in a coordinated volley. 8 insurgents rained fire simultaneously, rounds punching into walls and filling the space with the howl of automatic weapons. Hadley shoved Keane behind cover and returned fire, dropping a fighter who'd overexposed himself. She was burning ammo now, firing controlled bursts at multiple targets to keep them suppressed while she hunted an exit. 12 down, 8 to go. Her second magazine went dry. She reloaded as Keane grabbed an AK from a dead fighter and began shooting back with practiced competence. "You got an extraction plan, Captain," he barked. "Working on it, sir," she answered. Another fighter fell. Keane counted 13 total, 7 remaining. Hadley read the pattern of enemy fire and spotted 3 clustered near the main gate. She yanked a fragmentation grenade, timed the cook for 2 seconds so it couldn't be thrown back, and lobbed it into their position. The blast wiped out the cluster. 16 down, 4 left. The remaining fighters were cracking, their defense collapsing into raw survival. One sprinted for a vehicle. Hadley shot him. Another lifted his hands to surrender. She shot him too. This wasn't about prisoners. It was about getting Keane out alive, and she couldn't risk leaving any threats behind. 18 down, 2 remaining. The last pair had holed up in a guard shack, firing wildly through windows with the panic of men who knew they were already dead. Hadley and Keane moved to flank them, working in sync with the fluid precision that came from years of combat training. Keane laid down suppressive fire while Hadley maneuvered. She reached the shack's blind side, set her final breaching charge, detonated it, and together they eliminated the last 2 as the wall collapsed. 20 down, 0 left. The compound fell silent except for the ringing in her ears and the sound of her breathing. She swept the scene one last time, weapon raised, scanning for movement. Nothing stirred, just drifting smoke and settling dust. "Clear," she called. Keane lowered his rifle, his look mixing gratitude, disbelief, and the kind of exasperation only officers save for rule breakers. "Captain Cross, you just ran a solo assault on a fortified compound held by 20 fighters." "Yes, sir." "Without authorization, backup, or support?" "Yes, sir." "That's either the bravest or dumbest thing I've seen in 30 years. "Probably both, sir," she said, and he laughed, the sharp, shaken sound of someone still alive against all odds. "Let's move before they send more." They climbed into a captured technical, loaded it with weapons and ammo from the fallen, and drove out just as sunlight crested the horizon. Hadley took the wheel while Keane radioed for friendly forces, relaying their coordinates and requesting extraction. The pickup point was 10 kilometers away at a crossroads where U.S. air cover could reach them. 15 minutes of high-speed driving over open desert later, with no pursuit in sight, 2 Apaches appeared overhead, circling protectively. Then came the Black Hawk, dropping into a storm of dust. As they boarded, Hadley finally let the exhaustion and adrenaline crash wash over her. She had killed 20 enemy combatants, freed a hostage from a fortified compound, and completed an operation meant for an entire special operations team, alone. Because waiting for paperwork would have meant watching someone die. The crew chief handed her a water bottle as the Black Hawk climbed, and through the open ramp she watched the compound shrink, smoke still curling from the buildings. In a few hours, analysts would be poring over drone footage, counting bodies and battle damage, trying to figure out how one operator pulled off what should have required a full assault team. Keane sat across from her, his wrists still raw from the restraints, exhaustion and pain written on his face, but his eyes sharp and already parsing the after-action. "You know they'll hang you for this," he shouted over the rotor wash. "Probably, sir. Or give me a medal," she shot back. "Could go either way. I'll take whatever comes. Worth it to get you out." He went quiet, leaned in so she could hear. 3 years ago, I told you to prove you belonged. Today you proved you're one of the best officers I've served with. Male or female, doesn't matter. What matters is you acted when action was required, had the skill to execute against impossible odds, and the loyalty to risk everything for someone else. That's what makes great soldiers. Hadley felt the emotion she'd kept locked down during the fight rise up. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet," he replied. "Thank me after the investigation, the board, and whatever career fallout comes. But when they ask if I think you did the right thing, I'm telling them you saved my life, and any commander would be lucky to have you. The formal inquiry ran 3 days. Hadley sat through interviews from her immediate commander up to a 2-star general at Special Operations Command. The questions were the same. Why leave without authorization? Why not wait for trained rescue forces? Do you understand how many regulations you violated? Her answers were simple and steady. Keane had hours at best. Waiting for approval would have meant watching him die. I had the training, the opportunity, and the capability, so I acted. Investigators reviewed everything. Drone footage captured the assault in full. One operator moving through a fortified compound with a precision that looked choreographed. Radio intercepts recorded the enemy's panic as their defenses collapsed. Physical evidence from the site confirmed 20 enemy KIA, 0 civilian casualties, and tactics that matched special operations standards. The site commander testified Hadley had acted without orders, without coordination, in clear violation of protocol. He also conceded that a conventional rescue would have taken 8 to 12 hours to organize, and intel suggested Keane would likely be executed within 4 hours of capture. Keane himself spent 2 hours on the stand, laying out the ambush, his capture, and the immediate interrogation. The enemy had been prepping to film his execution when gunfire erupted outside. He heard his captors' confusion, felt their fear grow as their security was methodically eliminated. Then Hadley appeared, moving through that compound like death on 2 legs. The enemy never understood what hit them. Keane told the board they'd been facing a Ranger-qualified officer with combat experience, operating alone with nothing to lose. The tactical edge went to Captain Cross the moment she decided to act, because she grasped what others didn't. Sometimes a single soldier with the right training and courage is worth more than a whole company still waiting for orders. On day 3, the 2-star general leading the inquiry, General Everett Stone, sat across from her with a face she couldn't read. Captain Cross, what you did was reckless, unauthorized, and violated about 40 regulations on chain of command and operational approval. Yes, sir. It was also tactically brilliant, executed with exceptional skill, and it rescued a senior officer with 0 friendly casualties and 20 confirmed enemy KIA. He paused. I should court-martial you. Yes, sir. Instead, I'm promoting you to Major and sending you to Special Operations Command. Apparently, we need officers who can think independently and pull off impossible missions. You've proven you can do both. Sir, don't thank me yet, she said. Your new assignment is with a direct action unit that does exactly this kind of work. You wanted proof you could operate at the highest level. Consider your wish granted. He leaned in. Major Cross, next time you go off on an unauthorized solo raid, at least leave a decent note about where you're headed. My heart can't handle finding out after the fact. Understood, sir. You're also receiving the Silver Star. Classified ceremony, minimal attendance, no press. Your citation will be heavily redacted for OPSEC, but the award is real and deserved. 2 months later, Major Hadley Cross stood in a classified facility, getting briefings on missions that officially didn't exist. Working with operators whose names were redacted from records, she proved she belonged in a world that resisted accepting women, showing that gender didn't matter when a mission demanded courage and skill. The unit was small and elite, full of operators who'd earned their place the hard way. At her first team meeting, the commander, a lieutenant colonel with 20 years in special operations, introduced her simply. This is Major Cross. Most of you have heard the story, the lieutenant colonel said. She pulled off a solo hostage rescue that left 20 enemy KIA and brought 1 colonel home. No friendly losses. Some call it the gutsiest op they've seen in 10 years. I call it exactly the kind of initiative we need in this unit. Welcome aboard, Major. The operators around the table gave her the silent, measuring look special operations soldiers reserve for newcomers. They had all done impossible things, all proved themselves in ways conventional troops never could. The question in their eyes was simple. Can she keep up? Over the next 6 months, Hadley answered it again and again. She ran missions in the Khareth Basin, Iraq, Somalia, places where American forces officially weren't present, doing things that officially never happened. She proved her solo raid hadn't been luck, but the result of years of sharpened skill and instinct. Her team learned to trust her judgment, her tactical sense, and her willingness to take calculated risks when the mission demanded it. More importantly, they learned that gender meant nothing when rounds were snapping overhead and decisions had to be made in seconds. Colonel Robert Keane attended her Silver Star ceremony in a secure facility that didn't officially exist. Afterward, he pulled her aside. "I still can't believe it, Hadley. 20 fighters, 1 operator, no support. I've worked with Delta, DevGru, the best of them. What you did ranks among the most impressive solo ops I've ever seen." "Had to, sir," she said. "Couldn't let them keep you." He smiled. "That loyalty's going to take you far in this business, but try to get authorization next time before you start a one-woman war. The paperwork from your rescue's still bouncing around command channels. It'll probably be studied for 20 years, either as a perfect example of initiative or of what not to do." "Probably both, sir. Definitely both." He handed her a small box. "The team wanted you to have this." Inside lay a custom-made challenge coin. On one side, a burning compound. On the other, engraved words. 1 operator, 20 enemies, 0 given, Khareth Basin, 2024. Hadley laughed, the first genuine laugh since the mission. "This is completely inappropriate, sir." "That's why we made it," Keane said. "Keep it. Remember, sometimes the right action is the unauthorized one. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting through it. And when everyone said it couldn't be done, you proved them wrong." She kept that coin in her pocket on every mission after that. It was a reminder of the day she'd gone in alone, fought through 20 enemies, and proved that one soldier with the right skill and courage could achieve what whole armies called impossible. Years later, when Hadley Cross retired as a full colonel, carrying more classified commendations than most generals ever would, young operators often asked about that night in the Khareth Basin, about her choice to go solo, about fighting through 20 hostiles and doing what everyone else said couldn't be done. Her reply never changed. "I didn't think about possible or impossible. I thought about a good man who needed help and whether I could give it. Everything else was just execution." That mindset, focusing on the mission, not the obstacles, became her legacy in special operations. She taught officers to stop asking, "Can this be done?" and start asking, "How can I make this happen?" The difference was subtle, but it reshaped everything. Hadley passed that lesson to dozens of young officers through her career. Some went on to carry out their own impossible missions, making calls that looked reckless on paper, but made perfect sense when lives were at stake. They called it pulling across, acting beyond authorization when time left no other option. But the real lesson wasn't about breaking rules. It was about recognizing when the rule book itself stood in the way of doing what was right, and having the moral courage to accept the fallout when saving lives demanded action. On her last day in uniform, Hadley stood before a room filled with special operations officers, the future of unconventional warfare. The ceremony was brief, just as she'd wanted. No long speeches, no pomp, just a simple nod to 30 years of service. Before leaving, she offered one final message. "You'll face moments when the authorized course and the right course don't match. When that happens, you have to choose. You can follow the rules and live with the cost of inaction, or you can do what needs to be done and take whatever punishment follows. I made my choice in the Kerith Basin, and I'd make it again tomorrow. Because I can live with a reprimand or a court-martial. What I can't live with is watching good people die because I was too afraid to act. Silence filled the room. Then, one by one, every officer stood and saluted, not because regulation demanded it, but because they felt the truth of her words, knowing one day they might face the same impossible decision. From the back, now a 2-star general, Robert Keene watched quietly before stepping forward to see her one last time. 30 years, Hadley, from lieutenant to colonel, from proving you belonged to showing others what right looks like. Keene said with quiet pride. I'm proud of what you've done. Couldn't have done it without your mentorship, sir. Yes, you could have, he replied. You proved that the night you came to get me. But I like to think I helped a little along the way. He smiled. What's next for you? Teaching, she said, glancing out the window at the operators training in the distance. Young men and women learning the skills they'd need to survive in hostile ground, to make impossible choices, to do what others wouldn't. Not at a university or some private firm. I'm joining a program that trains foreign military officers in counterterrorism, Colombia, the Philippines, Jordan. Countries building their special operations forces. Someone's got to pass on what we learned. Might as well be me, Keene chuckled. Still can't sit still, can you? Still have to be in the fight, even from a different angle. It's what we do, sir, she said. We serve. The uniform changes, the mission changes, but the calling never does. They shook hands for the last time, mentor and student, general and colonel. 2 soldiers who understood that service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It's a lifetime's promise to keep making the world safer, one mission at a time. The enemy had captured their commander, planning to torture, execute, and parade him as an example. Then Hadley Cross went in alone to bring him home, and 20 fighters learned too late that taking an American officer hostage was a death sentence delivered by a woman they never saw coming. 1 operator, 1 rifle, 20 enemies eliminated, 1 life saved. The kind of math that only makes sense when you realize that sometimes the right choice is the one you're not authorized to make. And the kind of courage that inspired generations of operators who understood that impossible just means not yet accomplished. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories every day. Old Bill's Tales.